You know what, I'm going to use the microphone. We'll see how this goes. Because having sat in these kinds of presentations, it's sort of frustrating if you can't hear that well. So first of all, I'd like to thank you for sharing your lunch with me. And before we get started talking about organization, let's talk about something really important, and that is the basketball game tonight. I'm just curious, did anyone in this room have Duke and Wisconsin as their final team?
My daughter.
Oh, your daughter. Two people. Okay, we got two people that know people that have, right? Okay, that's good. Yeah. My bracket was totally annihilated in the second round, but that's okay. It's still going to be a fun night, and opening day with the Pirates, so, you know, it's just a great day. So, a little bit about organization. And when I do a presentation like this, people typically ask me the very first question is, okay, Ann, what is it that qualifies you to talk to us about organization? What do you know about organization, and why should we listen to you? And that is a fair question. So I really have two answers to that. The first is I've learned about organization through what I call the school of hard knocks. And I tell people, if there is a mistake that could have been made in the area of time management, or productivity, or efficiency, I've already made it. So I already know how to do all the things that can be done wrong, and I've learned from that to become more organized and more effective. But my other reason for being here is a much more personal one. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background. 10 years ago, I was a vice president of sales. And in my professional life at that time, I had 85 people reporting to me. I had a $130 million budget, and I was on a plane every single week. That was my professional life. My personal life, I was a widow with two young children at home. So think about that. On a plane every single week, and a widow with two young children at home. So when people say, Ann, what do you know about managing organization? What do you know about being stressed? What do you know about all the things that come with being organized? I say, I know what it's like to have your day so packed that if one thing slides, even by 15 minutes, your whole day's shot. And I know what it's like to get to the end of my work week and feel like I haven't given enough to my job and I haven't given enough to my kids. And I also know what it's like to put my kids to bed, climb into bed with my laptop, because somehow if I was sitting in bed propped up on fluffy pillows, it didn't feel like I was still working at 11 o'clock at night. So when we talk about organization, you know, I've been here. Now fast forward to when it was time for me to start my own business, and I learned about this company called PEP Worldwide. And PEP stands for Personal Effectiveness Program. And the whole mission of PEP Worldwide is to help people do their job in less time so that then they can move on to the rest of their life. And you can imagine, when I heard that, when I learned about this company, I was like, oh, I needed that. It just resonated with me. And then I thought, wow, I bet some other people need that too. So that's how I ended up here today, and that's why I'm here. Which actually leads me then to purpose. How many people here know that 2015 is the year of purpose at Bad Inc? Raise your hands. Oh, okay. All right, you guys, I got to tell you, we're going to need a little bit better participation in that, because I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions. So let's try that again. How many people know that 2015 is the year of purpose at Bad Inc? Okay, so then when I met with Jamie and Sarah, and they told me about the year of purpose, I thought to myself, what does that really mean? It's kind of amorphous to me. I was having a hard time getting my arms around what exactly is purpose. So of course, what did I do, like most people? I Googled, what is purpose, right? And this is what it told me. It said purpose comes down to what are your values? What are the principles that guide your life? What are your hopes and dreams? And so I thought about that and I thought, I still don't exactly have my arms around what purpose is. Nothing was really coming to mind. And then it hit me. Really, purpose often presents itself in strife, when things aren't going so well. And so I find oftentimes purpose reveals itself when we have those bad days. You know, here we go, yeah, like that. Thank you. You know, like a day like this, you know, when your head's on your desk and you're like, what the heck? And in fact, when I'm having one of those days, generally, I look a lot like this. My head's in my hand, and I'm asking myself two questions. I'll say, what the heck am I doing? And then immediately, I'll follow it with a question of, why am I doing this? And then often I'll say to myself, why am I doing this to myself? Right? And inevitably, when I'm having this kind of a day and I ask those two questions, if I pause a minute, the answer bubbles up within me. And so for me, when I have the bad day regarding my current business, the answers that come to me, and I've had them, is really, my purpose is that I want to help people. And really on multiple levels. I want to help people clearly with pep worldwide because my goal is to help people do their job in less time, to give them more hours in the week, and to free them to go live the rest of their life. So that's one part of it. But the other part, just like you guys have bad gives back. You know, there were so many great causes out there, and I wanted the ability to support them in a bigger way, in a better way. And so when I formed my company, I made a pact, I made a commitment that a certain percentage right off the top was going to go to nonprofits, was going to go to those organizations that I wanted to support in a bigger way. And so that's purpose, but I will tell you, it didn't reveal it when things were swimming along like a song. It really revealed itself when I was asking myself, why am I doing this? So I'd like to have you take just a minute and ask yourself, what gets you through your bad days? What do you tell yourself on your bad days? You don't have to share it with me. Just take a minute and think about it, and then we'll move on. Now, something may have come to you, and it may not. If it didn't, golly, you're probably having a really great day. But I say this just to say, the next time you're not having such a great day, be a little bit aware, be cognizant. What are you telling yourself? Why are you here? Why are you doing this, and what are you doing? Ask yourself that question, and then pause a minute and see what answer reveals itself. Now, you probably say, okay, this is kind of interesting, but really, Anne, what does this have to do with organization? And the fact of the matter is, organization, improved organization, gives you the gift of time. Because really, if our day-to-day life, our business life, we are running from meeting to meeting to meeting, or we feel like we're spending our whole day just trying to keep our head above water, or if at the end of the day, we're feeling like we're more in the reactive mode than being proactive, then we'll never have the moment, the time, to ever even ponder what is our purpose. And so organization really gives you that extra time to ponder this and to live the rest of your life. So, that leads me to this question. What would you do if you had an extra 30 minutes a day? And most people then, when I ask this question, they'll say, well, okay, and do you mean business or personal? And to that, I say, yes. Because most of us, if we had an extra 30 minutes a day, would add things both in the business world and in their personal world. So take just a minute, jot down a couple of things that you would do if you had an extra 30 minutes a day, and then we'll share them out in the group. Okay, so let's just shout out from all the tables. You know, just shout out some of the things that that you wrote down.
Sleep.
What?
Sleep.
Sleep. Okay, my personal favorite. Others.
Exercise.
Okay, wait. Exercise. Walk your dog. Walk your dog. Okay, exercise. Sleep. What else? You said walk your dog too. Others? What was that? Okay, clean your house. You're a better woman than I am. All right. What else?
Call my family and friends.
So spend time with family and friends. All right. Others?
Make better dinners.
Cook. Okay. That's good. Take care of your family. That's nice. Not so much takeout. That's me. Others?
Nothing. Just relax.
Nothing. Good. Relax. Do nothing. Okay. You guys will be happy to know, maybe a little bit surprised, that you are normal. Because here's when we ask people, when we ask large groups what they would do with an extra 30 minutes a day, here are some of the things that they say. They said they would plan, they would think, they would step back a little bit, sort of what I talked about with purpose. They would meet with colleagues, they would learn more, they'd get organized, but here they'd read for business but also for fun. They'd exercise, they'd go home on time, whatever that means. They'd take a lunch break, or maybe eat lunch. They'd have that me time. You were me time. They'd have that family time and friend time. And sleep. So, yeah. And walk your dog, and that would be in the me time, family time, because of course the dogs are part of our family, right? So, here's the thing. As we think about organization, what I would like you guys to do is think about this list. Think about the things that you wrote down. What is it that you want to spend more time doing? And then when you think about, because if you're going to change the way you behave and get more organized, it will involve some change. So rather than think about, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do something differently, I'm going to have to do something new that I haven't done, that will be sort of scary and a bit of a deterrent. So this is what you want to think about, because this is the goal. You want to think about those things that you would do if you had an extra 30 minutes. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and look at our first habit of organized people. And this is reduce interruptions. And I start with this because interruptions are can actually be part of an organization's culture. So, I'd like you to think about the last time you were working on a project and man, it was flowing. Okay? For me, when I think about that, I always have my water and my coffee, and I'm heads down, and it is such a great feeling, isn't it? And I'm thinking, wow, this project is really moving, I'm getting this project done. Generally, my thought bubble is, yes, and this is feeling so good, right? And then you're in the flow, and all of a sudden, hey, you got a minute? Does that ever happen in this work environment? So what we know, the Wall Street Journal did an article last year, and it said, when that happens, when we are in that deep flow of working on a project, and we get interrupted, it takes 25 minutes to refocus and get back to that same level of focus and concentration. But guess what? In America, Americans are interrupted every 15 minutes. That's major interruptions. So you can see the math is not really working out that well. The other thing is that if your line of work, I know we have accounting here, If your line of work is such that you're working with a lot of detailed information, with numbers, with Excel spreadsheets, mistakes double after an interruption of even 3 seconds or less. So interruptions not only are frustrating and cause us to lose a lot of time, but they also can cost companies a lot of money. So one thing to ask yourself is, do you interrupt others? If we interrupt others, it sends a clear message that it is okay to come and interrupt us. So a couple of tips if you are interrupted is, ideally, if you're interrupted, you want to tell the person politely, hey, I'm busy right now, but I could see you at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Really just be honest with them, okay? Very few of us, 75 to 80% of the time, we take the interruption. And once we take the interruption, before we get back to our work, we do 2 other things, okay? So just be honest with the person. Say, this isn't a really good time. I can see you later. Or another tip is, if someone interrupts you, walks into your office space, you want to stand up. You definitely don't want to let the person sit down because that automatically makes the interruption take longer. So you stand up and you very politely chat with them and walk them to your door. Okay? That's another way you can politely handle interruptions. But I also want to take the time now and talk about a real-world story. I was doing a program with a small investment company here in Pittsburgh. There were only 5 people in the organization. When I put up this slide on interruptions, I looked around the conference table, and everybody had this sort of sick kind of guilty, nervous grin on their face. And I said to myself, there is something going on here. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely something going on here. And so as I began to talk about it, what I learned is, here was the situation. The number 2 person in that company was named Michael. Michael was really kind of the center of the wheel. He was their key analyst. And so he analyzed every single product that came through that they made investment decisions around. Because he was the keeper of so much information, everybody needed access to it, so everyone seemed to always need access to Michael. So Michael was being interrupted all day long. That was his professional life. In his personal life, he had a wife with 3 little children at home. The youngest was about 2 months old. So I had his wife saying to him, Michael, please, you cannot be at the office all night. You have got to come home and help me. So when I put this slide up, little did I know, but Michael was about ready to explode. Okay? So what happened is the CEO said, we have an issue with this in our organization, and we are going to talk about it right now and come to some conclusions. And so that's what we did. I facilitated the group, and we talked about it, and here's what they came up with. They said if they looked into Michael's office, he had an office, and they saw he was heads down in a project, they agreed they would not interrupt him. That they would wait, they would either send him an email asking for a time that was convenient for him to meet, or they would wait till they saw him in the hallway in the lunchroom getting a cup of coffee. So that was the first thing. Now, a lot of times people interrupt us because they don't know when they're going to get access to us. So the other thing is there was one woman in particular that interrupted him all the time. And it was with good reason. She was dealing with a lot of the clients around whom they were making these decisions, investment decisions. And so she was always needing access to Michael. So what they did is they then set up a standing 10-minute meeting. And so what that allowed them to do is to look and see what had happened and talk about anything that happened the afternoon before. They did 10 minutes every morning. And then she could also talk with Michael about what she saw on the horizon. And with that, they were able to handle things in a much more expedient way without so many interruptions. So 30 days later, I went back And I sat down with Michael, and in our one-on-one coaching session, and I said, Michael, how's it going? And he said, oh my gosh, my life has changed. He says, I am getting all my work done during the day, and my stress has gone way down. So, now I have a little table discussion. Here's the question, is what can we do, what can you do at BAB to reduce interruptions? So I'd like you to think about your team, your organization. Do you have a Michael on your team? Or are you Michael on your team? And sit down, what we're going to do is just talk about, just brainstorm some ideas how you can reduce interruptions. And then we're going to have some of you share them out. Okay, we'll give you 4 or 5 minutes for discussion. Okay. Now it's time for you guys to talk. I'm really happy though, because it sounds like you've got a lot of great ideas to share. And so, Kaylee's going to bring the microphone around. We'll have some of the tables share. So who came up with some ideas? Who would like to share? And just know if you don't volunteer, I will call on somebody. Okay, Rebecca. Good job, sharers.
Okay, thank you. One of the major topics of our discussion right now was we thought that it's better to email somebody rather than call them or go to their office, because if you email them, certainly they'll see the email and the subject line coming in, and they can make a very quick decision. Is this something I need to respond to quickly, or can this wait?
Okay, good. Other ideas?
We also talked about email being a good solution, but another thing is if someone is involved in a specific project and they know that they're going to be unavailable for a period of time, maybe a day or two or a few hours or an afternoon, to let their team know, especially if they are involved in something. And then if it's not an urgent matter or it can be answered by someone else, you've given everyone a heads up.
That's a great point. Oftentimes what we find is if you let people know you're not available, they can figure out a solution. But at least they're not being held at bay waiting for you to get back to them. So that's really important. Other ideas? Other sharing? Come on, there's a lot of talking going on. Who else?
Close your door.
Close your door. Okay.
We talked about putting a do not disturb sign on your door or your cube, or just hanging something over there, and maybe you can put the hours specifically from 2 to 4, or come back at 1 or 2.
Right. That's a great idea. And I've seen people use do not disturb signs, and the thing is, it is a cultural thing. If you see that, if you guys agree that that's a good solution at BAB, then we request that you honor that. And I've also seen people actually set up office hours, where they say, okay, and the woman, I remember doing that, she would set up different hours each day. So if someone was always busy at 9 in the morning, there would be other alternative times. So great idea. Yes?
One of the topics that we kicked around was just before you even go to see somebody, sit there and think about, is this really a priority? Is this something that I immediately have to go tell somebody about? And maybe you want to collectively get a list of things and then go see that person, rather than just be the information highway.
That's great. And wouldn't we all appreciate that if people gather up their thoughts so that they come to us in a little bit more organized fashion, rather than every time they've got one thing to talk about, they pop into our office or into our workspace. So that's great. Other ideas?
Often if I'm going to see somebody, I will put their name in the search in my email, and I will see if there are, to Mark's point, if there are other topics that I need to address when I have that person's FaceTime.
Great. So again, you'll group, we call that batching. We'll batch things together that we want to talk to the person about so that we're more effective.
And nobody please do that to me, please. Yeah.
So I saw another hand.
I don't know if this is a real tangible
Well, you and everyone else, because we actually call email the black hole of business today. So, and that's actually a great segue to our next topic. I'll be talking a little bit more about email in that. Any other thoughts or ideas? Yes?
I'd say if you're a point person, I mean, if you have, you can't close the door, but if you have a receptionist or an admin person, tell them what's going on, so someone rather than boarding into the person who wants, they can check first with your point person.
Right. And that's great. I'll use admin as the example. Let your admin know, but then also as part of that, let your admin know when you'll be available. Okay, I'm setting aside 45 minutes to get this project done. I'm closing my door. You know, the other thing is, someone said they didn't have the mic, close the door. And again, just this awareness, if we make because I've talked with a lot of people and they say, oh, I want an open door policy. But if you start being more cognizant about interruptions, what you realize is if someone closes the door, they're not being rude, they're just trying to get some work done. And so that's the other thing. I just finished up with a client last week, and what they did is they, as their team, said, okay, if I'm really to get work done, I'm going to close my door. I'm not trying to be rude. And when I'm done with my project, I'll open it up. But again, it just heightens that awareness. So if someone walked down the hall and saw their doors closed, then it was what Jamie said. Is this really important? Is it important enough that I have to interrupt them right now, or can it wait? So, okay, that was a great discussion. Let's move on to the next topic. And I'm going to let Aziz introduce it for me.
I like the internet, but it's very annoying sometimes. Like, does this situation happen to you? You're sitting at your computer, working on something really important, and then you think, man, I wonder if Home Alone 2 made more money than Home Alone 1. I gotta look into this now. Sorry, important work, something more pressing has come up. I do stuff like that all the time. And what's so annoying is once I start looking into one thing, I'll see something else I want to research. For example, in the Home Alone situation, I'll be looking at that and I'll say, oh wow, Joe Pesci's in that movie. I don't know much about Joe Pesci. Maybe I should learn everything about Joe Pesci. And then I'll spend hours doing all this Joe Pesci research, and now I know so much about Joe Pesci. But this useless information is never going to help me. I never heard of a situation where guys get in an alley, the dude with a knife is like, you're going to die tonight. Unless you tell me the name of the album Joe Pesci put out when he was a little kid. Little Joe sure can sing. Damn it, you're free to go. How come so many people know that? I gotta stop integrating Joe Pesci trivia into my murders. People know more about him than I anticipated.
Okay, so what we find today in business, okay, well, first of all, can you relate to that? Please tell me about people in one, right? We can relate to that. And I think that just shows distractions. Oh, wait, I guess I forgot to use this. Distractions have become so much a part of our culture today that we're starting to see comedy skits about it. I mean, that's when you know, and the reason that it's funny is because everybody in the audience watching Aziz could relate to it. So, sorry, I must have hit the back button. Excuse me. Okay, so now the second habit is reduce distractions. Okay, there's a large design firm, Gensler Design Firm, and they're out of LA, and they do a lot of design work for modern office spaces all across the country, probably in the world, but certainly all across the country. And they said to themselves, wow, if we're going to be designing office spaces, we probably should understand how people work today, how people work in the 21st century. And so they did a huge study of work habits. And this is what they learned. They learned that workers today change screens every 3 minutes. So I think, well, okay, I can be working on a project, and I could be in Word working on my project, and I could have to go to the internet to check some facts. Or I could need to go to an Excel sheet to get the correct figures, the right numbers. So I could still be switching screens every 3 minutes and staying focused on one project. But the other thing that they learned is workers change projects every 10.5 minutes. Think about that. Now, you guys are what they call knowledge workers. Knowledge workers have executive function. And knowledge workers are doing things like, they're doing marketing. They're coming up with new marketing ideas. They're coming up with new products. They're thinking of new ways to deal with things. They're handling customers. Okay? Knowledge work requires focus and concentration. And that's the other thing that this Ginsler study found, is that knowledge work and the need for focused work has actually increased over the last 5 years. So, how can we reduce distractions? Now, one of the more obvious ones is reduce clutter. But I was working with, and I'm sure people are thinking, well, of course, she's like an organization person, what else is she going to say? But I was working with a client last week, and again, I always walk in and I say, hey, so how's it going since the last time I saw you? This particular woman said to me, her organizational system, before we worked together, was that she would be working on a computer, but she would have her projects sort of neatly stacked, on her desk. So they would be at her fingertips and she could get to them quickly. One of the things that we do in our program is we help people figure out a way to still have their key items at their fingertips, but they're not necessarily on top of their workspace. And what she said to me was, she said, Ann, I never realized it before, but when I was working on something and if I had to go to my back cadenza, reach to my back cadenza to get something, every time I did it, I could see all my projects. And she said, and I would start to think about another project, even though I was in the midst of working on one at that very moment. So reducing clutter will reduce your distractions. And also, we've all been to people's offices, right? Where they've had the post-it notes like framing their computer. And, it's really hard to stay focused when you're looking at your computer when you have, 57 post-it notes, around your computer. So reducing clutter can and does reduce your distractions. And it frees yourself to focus. Now another thing, and you mentioned email, another thing that often happens is we suggest to reduce distractions, turning off the audible and visual notifications on your email. I'm getting some nods. One of the things that when we get that ping, and I'll use the audible, when we hear that ping, and we're working on a project, for me it used to be, oh, okay, I got an email. I'm working on something, but should I look at it? No, I'm not going to look at it. It would be like a little tug of war with myself to open the email or not. But really at that point, once you've had that mental tug of war, it doesn't really matter because you've already lost your train of thought. So what we suggest with email is that you pick a frequency that you're comfortable with. And you say, whether it's 3 times a day, 5 times a day, once an hour, whatever it is, pick a frequency, check your email at that frequency. What is a reasonable response time? And then set email aside and focus on your work. So these are some tips to reduce distractions. And the third one is stop procrastinating. Now I think, okay, this is one easy to say, harder to do, right? But what we know is work that we put off seems bigger than it really is. I like it to work that I put off as the big green monster that was in my room when I was a kid. When my parents shut the door and turned off the lights, out he would come. He would get bigger and bigger and bigger until he was hanging over my head, making me very stressed out and looking really big. And that's how the work that we put off is. It starts to become that big green monster. Now, if we do it now, we'll relieve stress. I mean, having those big projects hang over our head is very stressful. And one way we suggest to do that is practice what we call the salami technique. And the salami technique, well, I'll tell a little story. I'm a very lucky person because I have relatives in Florence, Italy. Okay, and I've been taking my kids there since they were babies, right? Now it sounds very glamorous, but it's not because their apartment is about the size of this table. So we're all stuffed into this little teeny apartment. So needless to say, we do not spend very much time inside. We spend most of our time walking around outside. And when we're doing that, we will see, particularly before lunch and before dinner, we will see these old Italian men walking around, going home with a giant salami under their arm, or a big like prosciutto thrown over their shoulder. Now we know they're not going to sit down and eat those all in one setting, right? So what are they going to do with that salami or prosciutto? What are they going to do? What? Slice it, thank you. Yes, they're going to cut it into small, manageable, digestible pieces. And that's what we need to do with that big monster project. We've got to tame the beast and break that down into small, manageable pieces. And then when you do, put it on your calendar. So if you've got a project that's hanging over your head and you break it down into small, manageable pieces, and you say, okay, I've got 3 one-hour segments, 3 one-hour pieces of this project. What we suggest you do is you go to your calendar and you find 3 one-hour slots. And you book time to work on this project. That way people know your calendar shows up as busy. And what you know then is, yes, I still have a big project, I still have a deadline, but I know I have the time to get it done. I've scheduled time to get it done. And that really takes the stress way down. Now the last tip in reducing procrastination is do the worst first. There was a study that was done, and it actually resulted in something named the PREMAC principle. So this study showed that there is one way that people were able to do the same task 50% faster. All right? Does anybody have a guess of what enabled these people, what motivated these people to do their task 50% faster? Any ideas? Just shout them out. Any guesses?
Get it over with.
What?
Get it over with.
They wanted to get it over with. Okay. Anything else? What?
Said they rewarded themselves after?
Some kind of a reward, like, yes, people a lot of times guess what did they give a bonus? People will say, did they give a bonus? Did they give them some money? Did they give them recognition? No. The only difference between, the only thing that caused the difference between doing the task and doing it 50% faster was they scheduled something immediately following their unpleasant task was something that they really enjoyed. So, for example, a lot of times I'm so lucky. I get to work with really nice people, and when I work with them, oftentimes they become friends. So a lot of times if I have a task that I don't want to do, I will schedule the task, and then I will schedule a conversation with somebody that's become a friend. And I will schedule that right afterwards. And then it motivates me, somebody said that, it incents me to move through the project a lot faster. Another thing that I'll do with this later in the day is I'll say, okay, Ann, you cannot eat lunch until you get this project done. Because I love to eat, who doesn't love to eat lunch? So, and what we say actually, we suggest do the worst first. So come in first thing in the morning, even before you tackle email, and sit down and say, okay, what is this project? What's the project on my to-do list today that I really don't want to do? And do that first thing in the morning and get it off your list, off your shoulders, and just, your stress will go way down. So, what I'd like you to do, because procrastination and distractions are much more solitary endeavors, I'd like you just to take a minute and jot down 1 or 2 ideas in these areas around distractions and around procrastination that you want to give a try. 1 or 2 things. Let's make this lunch and learn actually have some value afterwards. And then we're going to go on to the last one, and that'll be a group discussion. Okay? Okay. I want to be cognizant of your time, so let's all take a look at the fourth habit, because it is also part of an organizational culture. The next habit for organized people to really save you time is to reduce time in meetings. Let me ask you a question. I'm sure nothing internal, but the last time you were in a meeting that was not being well run, what was your thought bubble saying to yourself? Just shout it out. What? Got very quiet in here all of a sudden.
You could be doing something that is more important.
Right. I got a million things I could be doing. Anything else? What else? Mine is, I'm in jail. That's what I think. Like, I am sitting here, I am stuck, and I'm in jail. I can't get out, right? So meetings can be super frustrating, but meetings are actually increasing 10% a year. So if they're growing, I guess we better figure out how we can make the most of them, how we can make them be effective, right? Here are some stats. Senior managers actually spend 28 hours a week in meetings. So think about that, that's 3/4 of their time. Middle managers, 21 hours a week, so over half their time in meetings. And it has a huge domino effect, because when we call people into meetings, not only are we, we're tying up a lot of people's times when, they could be doing something else. So if that's the case, let's think about how we can make our meetings be effective. So here are some tips, and then what we're going to do after we go through this is we're going to have another round table discussion, and we're going to talk about how we can make our meetings more effective. First is to stay to the subject or agenda, which assumes that every meeting has a subject or agenda. So number one, if you're holding a meeting, have a subject. Number two, stay on time. If you get really involved in your meetings and you're not one that typically watches the clock, we suggest you actually appoint a timekeeper. So that if you've got 8 items that you're trying to finish, and you're only on 2 and you're halfway through your time limit, that timekeeper is then empowered to say, hey, we've got to pick this up. Right? Because otherwise, oftentimes, whatever's on the back half of that agenda either gets glossed over or doesn't get fully discussed. So, appoint a timekeeper, stay on time. Third, close when finished. If you happen to have an hour meeting scheduled and you are done in 45 minutes, free people, let them go. Give them that gift of the extra 15 minutes. Can you guys think of a time when your meeting got out early and it was like, wow, this is really great. 15 minutes, unscheduled. I can go do something. Also, not everyone who's in the meeting needs to be there the whole time. If you are just presenting a portion of the meeting, then ask the leader needs to think, does this person need to be there for the entire meeting? Or if not, let them present their piece and then go on to do their other work, their real work. Next is keep them the right way. And this is really a bit of a topic of debate right now. Not debate, people are trying lots of different things because meetings are so time consuming. So we say, at minimum, meetings, instead of being 30 and 60 minutes, which is sort of how we automatically schedule them, should be at least 25 or 50 minutes. Because otherwise, if you've got back-to-back meetings, which we learned in the last slide, it's not that uncommon, then there's no way that you can be on time. If the meeting starts at 1 and ends at 1, you're automatically behind schedule, and then you're on the run all day. You're playing catch-up all day. So at the very least, schedule your meetings for 50 minutes and 25 minutes. But we're also seeing people becoming much more aggressive in trying to shorten their meetings. And here's what I'm starting to see more and more, is people are making a deal with their teams, and they're saying, okay, I'm going to take that 60-minute meeting, and I'm going to shorten it to 30 minutes. But here's what I'm going to do, or 25 minutes. But here's what I'm going to cut it by half. But here's what I'm going to do. First of all, I want you to read the agenda and come prepared. Second, I want you to be on time. I worked for a division of J&J at one time. They were based in California. They had so much of an issue with people showing up late to meetings that they started a rule that they would lock the door at the time the meeting started. And if you were not there, you didn't get in. From what I wasn't working at headquarters, but from what I heard, people weren't late more than one time. And then the third thing is people are asking their participants to leave their phones either in their pockets or in their offices. Because how many times have we been in a meeting where somebody's checking their text or checking their emails or having a side conversation, and then what happens is they go, oh, wait, I didn't hear what you said, could you repeat that? And then everybody else in the meeting is then waiting while it gets repeated for that one person. And so what we're seeing is really people saying, okay, I'm going to cut this meeting in half. I'm going to give you an extra 30 minutes of free time that you don't have to sit in this meeting, but this is what I want in exchange. So keep them the right way. And you know what that is. Is it cutting the meeting in half? Is it just switching it from a 60-minute to a 50-minute meeting? But really work with your team to see if you can shorten those meetings and make them more effective. The last is no more than 2 levels of management. It just begs the question, if you've got more than 2 levels of management in a meeting where decisions are being made, you've probably got too many people. And then follow the rule of 7. The rule of 7 states that for every person you have in a meeting, over 7 participants, the chance of you coming up with a viable conclusion, a viable result, drops by 10%. So every person you have over 7, the chance of you coming up with a viable conclusion drops by 10%. So just like we say when we talk about email, when in doubt, really think about, with email we say really think about who needs to be copied. When in doubt, cut it out. The same with rule of 7. Think about who needs to be in a meeting, and is it really important that they need to be there? Is this the best way they can spend their time? And finally, delegate clearly. I was talking with someone recently, and she said to me, wow, I usually delegate running down the hall. And then she was saying, but I'm not really getting the results I want from my delegation. And so what we say is when we delegate in meetings, and we're dividing up responsibilities, let people know, make it really clear the objective that you're trying to accomplish, the deadline, explain the result in sort of detailed terms. And if you're receiving the delegation, clarify it immediately. Oftentimes people will take it back to their office and say, I'm not exactly sure what they want, but I'll figure it out, or I'll ask somebody later. Do it now. Delegate now. So, what I'd like you to do is take 5 minutes. This is the last discussion. Take 5 minutes and let's talk about how at BAB you can actually make some ideas. What ideas do you want to try to make your meetings more effective? Think about your team. Think about the meetings that you're in regularly. And we'll share them out and then we'll wrap up. Okay. Let's wrap up our discussions and Haley's going to walk around again and get some feedback. So what are some ideas that you came up with to make your meetings more effective at BAB? I'll start.
We said stick to the topic and set a timer for speakers.
Good. Others?
Hello. You should not have given me this thing.
Our meeting is now going to become infamous.
Absolutely. All those things up there. We came up with no technology-free meeting. No laptops, no iPads, no iPhones. That's for Jerry.
Okay? Good. Not that we don't love technology, but it can be. All right, other ideas? There's a lot of talking, okay.
Two-way communication, participants and whoever's calling meetings. Sometimes those meetings turn into a one-way, the way it is.
Okay. So have discussions. That's a great point. If it's a one-way meeting, you can send out a memo or an email, right? So you want that meeting to be give and take, you want it to be two-way. Okay, someone else.
Sometimes it's not just who's there, but who's not there that should be there, that really should be.
Okay. That's right, that's a good point.
Sometimes morale or repetition can be
We're recording this, so that's why we're asking for these microphones.
sometimes repetition of things that have already been discussed can be a kind of a morale downer.
Okay.
Could you repeat that?
That's good. If you said it, do you really need to say it again?
What I consider purpose, have a purpose, stick with it, and the people that are supposed to be there should be there. Because too many times purpose is made, next thing you know, everybody begs off. So if you have a purpose, stick with it.
Okay. Other ideas?
Make sure your meetings are at a mutually beneficial time of the day, where it works for both parties or all parties.
Okay, so schedule them at a time when people can actually attend. That sounds like a good plan. Other ideas? Anything else? Okay. You know, yes, I'm sorry.
With that same comment is make time to attend the meetings, because I think it's really important. You can never really make a time that's good for everybody. But make time, attend the meetings. And I think if it's enough far ahead, I think you can do that.
Good point. That's good. Anything else? Okay, that was really helpful. So again, my goal was because particularly interruptions and meetings are really part of corporations' culture. And I think it was Jamie said earlier, half the battle is just being aware of some of the issues that people face. We'll capture this. But really, what I ask is that you take, and you take one idea and implement it. Do your meetings a little bit differently. Make an idea to enact something that reduces your procrastination. Try some new things that are going to help you stay focused. Just do something different. This has been an hour of your time, and we want to make sure that there is some benefit. And even though with technology and all the information that's coming at us from so many different places every single day, the challenges that we face are really as old as time. And I think Aristotle said it best. We are what we do repeatedly. Excellence is not an act, it is a habit. So that's it. I'm here. Thank you for giving me your lunchtime. I'm here for questions.